So right now we're on our way to pick up Pastor Steve and Sharon. We're going to go get some coffee and talk about the vision for the next 20 years of Wave Church. We just celebrated 20 years of what we know as Wave Church, of Pastor Steve and Sharon pioneering and pastoring our church. And it's pretty amazing to think about all the things God has done these last 20 years, the impact we've had in our community, in our nation, even around the world. And what's encouraging is that God just hasn't been involved, but God has really been leading us as a church. And I think about the lives that have been changed and transformed, the people that have found hope in the name of Jesus, people that have found a home, community in Wave Church, the local church that we really believe is the hope of the world. And what excites me is amazing all the things that God has done is what God is yet to do in these next 20 years. And so that's why we're going to go pick up Pastor Steve and Sharon and just hear from their heart about what these next 20 years could look like. We're also going to talk to some friends who've been along the journey with us for the last 20 years and beyond. There they are. I can see Skipper and Shaz. Hello, hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Ready to get some coffee?
Let's get some coffee,
yeah.
but don't run over my grass.
So Mom, Dad, we just celebrated 20 years last week as a church, which is pretty kind of crazy to think about. We've even been here for 20 years.
Yeah, totally.
And it made me think about just all the amazing things God has done. And, you said this before, Dad, we didn't get here just by wishful thinking. It's been a faith journey. We've gotten here by faith. I thought it'd be cool maybe for you guys to share what have been kind of the big faith moments for you guys over the last 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, it all goes back to me leaving New York, flying to Australia, knowing one day I'd come back, and then realizing that it was God who put that in me. It wasn't just a little boy's desire. And for me, I actually, over the years, there's been a couple of prophecies. Key moments for me was when Phil Pringle one time was preaching on blind Bartimaeus and was preaching about, well, what do you want? And all of a sudden, God just put Phil Pringle on pause, and God said to me, Steve, what do you want? And I finally had to deal with the fact that I had to now start, talking about and praying about going back to the States, that God was actually heating up the process. So that's when I really started talking to Sharon about it. But then I got invited, asked by Wally Odom to come preach in the church. I always knew to be on the East Coast of the United States. I knew to be by water. And I think God gives you the desires of your heart. And that was a God-given desire I had. But when I preached in that church, it was the most supernatural connection with any church I'd ever spoken anywhere. I'll never forget it. And that's when God spoke to the pastor, Wally Odom, and said, this is the guy you ought to give the church to. We had to help the church in the early days think bigger, not just think about us four no more, and help the church get a little, what I would say, interested in reaching lost people. And the music style, the way in which we conducted our services, the length of our services. So many of those things, like generosity, teaching people to be generous, teaching people leadership and vision. They were some of the early days.
So when we first came, obviously we changed the name to, that's a red light.
I'm like, he's not going to do this. He's going to kill us.
I mean, that's like borderline light orange. Or
No,
dark
buddy.
light red.
Buddy, no, it's full on red.
I think about the convention center, that we built as a church. That was a huge faith step moment. And kind of every building we've built is kind of a new step in faith. What is your perspective on those moments?
See, to me, a building says to a city and to its community, we're here to stay. If you own property and build a building, you're saying to the devil, we're not going anywhere. And this building is going to outlast me. It's going to outlast you. We're building for the generations to come. It's a statement to the community, the bride of Christ. She's beautiful. She's vibrant. She's a force to be reckoned with.
Totally.
It's a house. It's God's house. It's a place of peace and safety and healing and hope and restoration. And it's for those who aren't there yet. And we want to bring as many people as we possibly can. And so to me, it's far more than a building.
I think for me, I so believe when Jesus said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I believe in the church. I believe this is God's vehicle, God's idea to see hope penetrate humanity.
I think everywhere of where we are today in Wave Church and everywhere we'll be in the future, of which we have a great future, is based on this, that the Wave Church is not built on the gifts and the talents of a few. It's built on the faith and the sacrifice of many.
Yeah.
So we're going to grab a coffee with Toby and Peggy Harris and Joe and Sharon Monaco, who are key couples that have been with us along this journey over the last 20 years.
Without a doubt, we are where we are today because of people like them, eh, hun?
Totally.
Well, thank you guys so much for getting coffee with us. Toby and Peggy, you guys have been a part of the church for 27 years. I'd love to hear some of the stories over those years, even maybe what was your first impression of Pastor Steve and Sharon when they came to the States, to Virginia Beach?
I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, me too.
You should be nervous. You know, it was interesting the first time we met them. Actually, the Camerons introduced us,
Yeah.
but they talked to us about Steve before we got there.
All right.
They were very complimentary of Sharon. Ooh. But they warned us about Steve, okay? And everything they said was true, okay? And it was really about vision and focus and things like that.
I remember the first time we had Sisters Wave Women, the women's group.
Yeah.
And Sharon got up to speak and she had glasses on and you literally could see her knees hitting each other.
Yes.
And she was terrified, but she did it because she
Yeah,
knew
she
that
did.
she was called here.
Yep,
And I almost cry every devoted.
Are you gonna make
When
me
I
cry?
see her and what she's done, coming from the knocking knees to leading an army of women,
It's a miracle.
an army of women in these conferences, going from that purple-walled fellowship hall and knees knocking to going around the world and changing women's lives. And yeah,
It's unbelievable.
it's just, yeah.
It's huge.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
It's awesome.
You know, one of the things I really appreciate about you guys is you haven't just been a part of our church faithful for a season, but it's been many seasons. It's been over 20, 30 years, and I really admire and honor that. I would love to hear, what is it about the vision that has caused you to be so committed to not just being committed with church attendance, but even beyond that, financially giving? You know, why do you give to the foundation? Why have you given to the foundation?
There was a time when I wrestled with that. And Steve would come up with these ideas. At least that's what I thought then. I was wrong.
Wow.
I was wrong about that, and I didn't know how wrong I was then, because I don't think Steve was coming up with ideas. I think God was giving Steve a vision, and there's a huge difference. Then it seemed after a period of time that God said, you're not giving it to Steve, and you're not giving it to the church, you're giving it to me. Well, yeah, but what's going to happen to it? And he basically said, you know what, I'll take care of that. And then he said, you know, it's the vision I gave Steve, I didn't give you. You need to have faith.
Wow.
That if you feel led to give, then you're giving to me, and you need to have faith that I'm talking to Steve and Sharon, and that I'll handle that part of it. Don't you worry about that part.
Wow.
And that was an awakening for me.
Wow.
We want to always be the most leading by example pastors. And it's not without, I mean, to me, that's when you know it's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there's things we have sacrificed consciously that we could still have in our lives that aren't still to this day in our lives, but because God's house is a priority.
Right.
And not just leadership by example, but how could I ever encourage anybody to do something I wasn't doing, that we weren't leading the charge in? So I promise you, I know those feelings.
You know, the first time that we had a vision was to pay off the debt that we had on Seaboard Road. And it's funny, a lot of people kind of laugh at it because they think, oh, how you thought that was a big deal. It was $256,000. Let's see if we pay that off in a year. And people kind of, yeah, remember that was a big deal. And I go, we had 200 people. Do you know, that's something like us now having a vision to pay off the entire debt in a year now. That's basically the same vision. So it was a big vision at the time.
when you open your life and your heart to the things of God, and that includes giving and being generous, it changes everything. Your perspective changes, and the way you look at life, but also people. You realize the value of people, that every person really does matter. And I think ultimately that's, for us, has been the bottom line. You know, we've been doing this great journey together, but doing it with people that really love God's house. And that has been just unbelievable for us to watch and do this journey together.
You are, like Sharon said, both of you, all of you, just pillars in the house of God. And frankly, we wouldn't be where we are today if it weren't for people like you.
Right.
Thank you for the last 20 years.
And thank you.
The best is still yet to come.
Yes, it is.
Man, that was fun. They're really awesome.
Just amazing.
Yeah, you know what's great? They're just two couples of many, many hundreds and thousands of people who over the last 20 years have partnered with the vision of Wave Church, who give over and above their tithe, not just to see the house of God taken care of, but the house of God growing and expanding. And I think about, anyone giving at whatever level of sacrifice they're able to do is the key to, I think, seeing God's house expand, the mission of the church accomplished, and not to mention it's God's way of raising us with a heart of generosity and seeing just the work of the Lord accomplished. But you're also guaranteeing for your future generations in your own families being blessed in setting up your seed and the legacy you leave for the generations to come.
So why would you say, we started Wave Foundation? It's been called different things in the past, Building Fund, Wave Foundation. Why would you say that we started?
What we called over the past, we've had mission support, we've had building fund support, we've called it foundation. And in our Vision 2020, we're wanting to really help everybody understand there's a new way of identifying that, and that's called legacy. But really what it is, it's people who give over and above their tithe sacrificially because they love God's house. Hey?
Yeah, totally.
And they really believe that their giving can and will make a difference, and they can actually see the difference being made in people's lives. And that's really what the foundation's about. It's about building buildings. It's about for building God's home. It's about television. It's about global community care. It's about so many different aspects of reaching and influencing the world, partnering with like faith ministries that we feel there's a God connection. But we are that kind of a church. We're a church that puts the ask on because we want to make a difference in our city.
I know church is a huge focus and initiative of legacy. What does, in your mind, with church campuses and planting churches, what does that look like in the next 20 years?
I want to see 20 Wave churches in the United States.
That's awesome.
I love the footprint we have in Europe with pastors and what we have in South America. But right here in the United States, all of the 7 cities of Hampton Roads should have a Wave Church campus. And I know that. I know I don't want just Great Neck to be the only campus in Hampton Roads. And I want to see Suffolk, and I want to see up in the peninsula, and I want to see Portsmouth, and I want to see campuses and in every one of the 7 cities. And then on top of that, I know God's called us to have a Wave Church in New York City. It was where I was born. I've been saying that for 20 years.
Right.
And I know God wants us to have a church in Florida. I know God wants us to have a church in Washington, D.C. I know there's more churches for us in California. And they're just some, and we've actually worked out what it will cost. And that's the importance of this partnership with Legacy, and to give people a vision that life is more about you. Life is about making God's house a priority, reaching lost people. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we're all about, reaching lost people. Not just in Hampton Roads, not just where we have locations, but wherever that God has put a burden in our heart to have a footprint where we can genuinely make a difference.
These past 20 years, the generosity of faithful people, we've been able to see our community and beyond reach through the power of the local church. For 20 years, we've seen God move, lives change, and the kingdom advance. We have laid a foundation to see God do greater things, more lives changed, and the kingdom advanced in a way we have never seen before. Legacy has 5 areas of focus, which embody the whole vision of the church and work together in harmony so that we can broaden the reach of the gospel. Legacy includes church impact and expansion, community outreach locally and globally, communication initiatives including Wave TV and online outreach, the Collective empowering other local churches, and Wave Leadership College. Over the last 20 years, we have seen Wave Church expand from 1 campus to 7 locations, representing over 78,000 decisions for Christ. In the next 20 years, through Legacy, we are believing for 13 new campuses to be planted. Of those 13 new campuses, we are believing to plant a Wave Church campus in every city of Hampton Roads, as well as New York, South Florida, Washington, D.C., a second Richmond campus, Raleigh, North Carolina, Williamsburg, Virginia, and Cork, Ireland. Through these cities, over 22 million people are represented. That is 22 million people waiting to be reached with the gospel. Through communications, we've reached over 15 million people through Wave TV. Over 100 nations have been able to hear the gospel, and thousands have given their lives to Christ through Wave TV and media platforms. Our vision through the Legacy is to spread the good news where the church may not be able to go, but TV can. We have seen people make decisions for Christ through Wave TV in prisons, war-torn countries, and living rooms in our own community. In the next 20 years, we don't just want to be aired through Christian networks, but to share the gospel on secular networks in our nation. The power of TV is found in the ability to take the gospel where we can't go ourselves. We believe it is our responsibility as the church to go out into the world and share the love of Jesus. Through missions and your generosity, we are able to be the hands and feet of Jesus in our local communities and beyond. Over the last 20 years, we have given over $8 million to missions. In the next 20 years, we will continue to respond and give to natural disaster relief efforts locally and globally, as well as our mission efforts in Uganda, Sudan, Russia, Israel, and more. Through our local missions, Wave City Care has provided over 12,000 Thanksgiving meals, tutored over 9,000 young people, given Christmas gifts for over 12,000 children, provided groceries to over 100,000 people, seen over 2,000 people set free from addiction through the Regeneration Program, and has completed over 40 school makeovers. Through the Legacy, it is our vision to see Wave City Care local initiatives in every one of our campuses. Imagine the future and difference we can make in 20 Wave Church campuses on mission reaching their communities. Since 1999, Wave Church has had a vision of educating and training Christian leaders through the local church. In the years to come, Wave Leadership College, which is now fully accredited, plans to further expand campus facilities as we prepare Christian leaders to build a local church and transform their communities for the glory of God. As a church, we believe God has called us to empower local churches through the Collective. We value the power of relationship, and through the Collective, we are able to equip and release pastors and their churches to fulfill the Great Commission. We believe God has given us both a national and international mandate for this specific purpose. It is our vision to see more churches in relationship working together in like-minded spirit to change our world. All of this happens by the grace of God and the generosity of faithful people committed to leaving a legacy for generations to come. We are a church consumed with finishing what Jesus started. Our mandate is simple: to show people the love of God and build lives through a relationship with Jesus Christ. Our impact as a church goes beyond the 4 walls of our buildings, beyond our cities, and out into the world as we make a commitment to see lives change in our community and globally. What matters most to us is to see heaven populated, leaving a legacy of eternal influence. God has appointed you and I for such a time as this. We have our opportunity in history to leave our legacy, to ensure the next generation and the generations to come know the good news of Jesus Christ. Our prayer is that you would consider the part you and your family can play in leaving a legacy for the generations to come. We will accomplish so much more together than we could ever do on our own. Together, we have the resources and opportunity to bring the hope of Jesus to a broken and hurting world. We have the opportunity to leave a legacy of eternal influence. Our prayer is that each of us will find our place and purpose in the vision of God's house. The world is waiting. What legacy will we leave?